Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to another episode of Naked Sunday. I am your host, Caleb Nelson, and I have the lovely Vanda on my program today. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. And Pecky, of course.
And for anybody who's listening and not watching, we got a lovely little pup just snuggled to the nines in the background. Is she going to snore? I think it's the cutest thing when the dogs snore. I think it's
She
hilarious.
does snore, but you won't hear it. That's
Oh,
the thing. Is that
okay. Well, for anybody who's listening, just so you know, imagine this lovely little pup in the background just curled up, living her best life right now. We're having a good time. So, um, thanks for coming on today. I've been looking forward to this. Uh, if you have listened, obviously, to a couple of my shows, I do like to start my episodes with why I appreciate my guest. And I do this because I believe we need to start telling each other why we love each other. Far be it for me to say, I think it's probably a good step in this whole direction of a whole thing like called world peace. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm a dreamer. Was it the John Lennon song? They may say I'm a dreamer. I can't sing, so whatever. But to that effect, just as I'm looking at you, as like bright, yellow, vibrant, happy, like you just have this beautiful smile. Every time you and I have connected, you have this very positive, uplifting, warm, inviting energy. You're always looking to serve and be kind and connect. And we need more people like that and we were just talking about that before, people who need to have this more optimistic, upbeat, loving attitude towards life because it's merely, how did you say before? It's like it's up to us how we decide for this whole thing to go out. Like we can make it as easy or as hard as we want it to be. It's a matter of perspective. So I want to let you know that I appreciate that about you. So thank you for being you.
thank you very much. That makes people blush, doesn't it? And I think that's a good thing.
I like to make people blush because people get me back as well. It's not always just my fake and bake with that little glow. It's sometimes just they get me in the feels and I get all emotional about it and. But let's do this. Share with the audience because you know yourself better than I. Share with the audience, who are you?
And I'm Vanda, and I am a tour guide to your mind.
Oh,
I know that shocks people
that
normally.
pulls people in right there. Like, I'm a tour guide to your mind. Let's go down the rabbit hole. I feel like very like Alice in Wonderland. Pull me down the rabbit hole with you here.
Oh, brilliant. So, as a tour guide to your mind, what I help you to do is to explore, uncover, and remap your map of the world. So, the way how you think, how you feel, how you behave, how you communicate, how you experience the world altogether. Because we all have very different maps of the world. We all have very different ways of looking at the world in general. And I love to have people understand how it works in their own head and how it might work in other people's heads differently and why. Because once we understand that, we will be able to take charge of that thing between our ears. And I think that is absolutely magical when we can do that.
Hmm. I especially think that that's really valuable in this day and age where I think
That's
the
right.
concept of mindset work and your frame of mind, I think people are starting to really grasp that it's very important, especially in their pursuit of success and navigating life's challenges. I know mental health has become more like commonly spoken about, and people are addressing that a little bit more. What got you going down that path? What brought you to this world of becoming a tour guide for somebody's mind?
Well, that's always a very good question, isn't it? So my background is in neurorehabilitation. So I always knew from a very, very early age that I wanted to do stuff. I just didn't know. I mean, to do stuff with people or do stuff with animals. I wasn't quite sure on that. But it was all about helping people, enabling people, empowering people in different ways. Well, now I say people. Originally, I wanted to become a vet. But then I realized that I don't really want to study that much or not that those sort of topics. I want to study something else that actually lights me up. And this is when I went down on the neuro rehab route. So a neuro rehab specialist called a conductor works in conductive education, which is a very unique way of working with people with neurological conditions like Parkinson's, stroke, MS, head injury, cerebral palsy, all the weird and wonderful things that happen in your brain or in your the nervous system down your spine. So whatever happens there and has a physical implementation on your body. So I'm specialized in working with these conditions, and I spent about 20 years in that field. It was all about exploring the brain, the mind in general. So my back has always been the brain, and helping those people with the physical. I don't like to call them disability as well, different abilities or lack of abilities that they needed some help with, depending on their condition. And I absolutely loved it. I really, really loved every moment of it. And, not being big-headed, but I was pretty good at it because I loved it so much. I put all my heart into it, all my time, my effort. That was my day-to-day job. That was my everyday hobby. I really loved doing it. I did. My body didn't, because it's a physically very, very demanding job. And I had a very long-standing back problem. So my body just kept telling me that it was a little bit too much. It was a little bit too much. But you know how we are when we are young. We're like, nah, it's just one of those things, mind over body. You are young. You can just do whatever you want. Just ignore it. And I just kept brushing it under the carpet, brushing it under the carpet, and didn't really care about it much. Until I couldn't not stop and listen to what my subconscious was trying to tell me. And that was that I couldn't do that physically for much longer, as much as I loved it, as good as I was at it. So because I wasn't listening, my subconscious made sure that I did, and it put me to bed with a slip disc. And there I was, exactly. And I couldn't really move, and I was in pain, and I was in tears, and I thought life ended because that was the only thing that I knew how to do. I knew that I couldn't physically carry on doing that forever. At that time, it was a big, big wake up call for me. So I had to make a decision. Was I going to end up in a wheelchair, or was I going to move on and do something different? And after a sufficient amount of pity party, because let's be honest, we all need that, I've decided that I was going to look for something new. And this is when I went out there and actively started looking for something that I could transfer my field of expertise, which is the brain, neuroplasticity, so your brain's ability to rewire itself. So if it can do it by itself, then why wouldn't we do it intentionally? So grab that and transfer it into something else where I don't need to put that physical strain on my body. And that's where I met Neuro-Linguistic Programming, or NLP for short, which is based on neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself, and why wouldn't we do it intentionally, how it best suits us? No physical strain on my body. It's a match made in heaven. I still get to help people. I still get to do what I love, which is anything to do with the brain and with the mind. I still get to empower people. And if possible, I love this even more than I used to love that.
Wow. I think one of the things that really just stuck out in that story for me, and I think a lot of people grapple with this, whether it's an injury or a really powerful life-altering event. You talked about the pity party. There's that weird, awkward milieu between like I was in this, my life was shaped this way, my lifestyle was this way. I knew how to arrive, I knew how to do the thing. And then boom, there's a big change. Some people, it's sometimes it's like the midlife crisis. Some people, it's like you said, an injury. Some people, it's death in the family. Something that just kind of boom changes things, and all of a sudden I have to operate in a new way, or I need to find purpose or fulfillment or satisfaction, whatever it is, in a new way. Ironically, like I find like NLP deals with a lot of
That's
that
right.
rewiring. So it's kind of ironic that you went to the field that used the thing to help guide you through that shift. Um, do you find that you work now with a lot of people who also struggle with that kind of pivot, maybe whether it's career or whether it's purpose? Like, can you lead into that a little bit? Because I think that that's something that is not, I know I've struggled with that stuff, but I don't think people really sit with it and know that there's a path out of it. I think most people feel like, oh, this is it. This part of my life is done. Now what? And I feel like really empty and like lonely.
That's right. And I do work with many people who are on those crossroads. they know that they don't want to do what they are doing anymore, but they're not quite sure where to go. And this comes from a lot of different things. A big load of limiting beliefs about your own abilities of actually going out there and doing things, or limiting beliefs about change in your life, not just in your brain, although you can change that as well, but it's about, oh, if I set out to do something, then this is the road I'm going down for the rest of my life. This is how we are sort of conditioned in society, don't we? In general, you buy a house, you stay there. You choose a profession, you stay there. You start doing something, you stay there. And people don't quite know that, no, that's not the only way of living life. So then they lack confidence that they can do something different. They don't want to stand out in a bad way and do something different than anybody else do. And in most cases, it comes from that lack of confidence in their own ability. Because what we tend to think, and I know I was thinking exactly the same way, is that if I know how to do one thing, this is the only thing I know. But what we tend to forget is that that thing is full of transferable skills that you can utilize anywhere else. And this is what I'm very passionate about is to show people that those transferable skills are the building blocks of that castle that you built there. Now, why couldn't we take those building blocks and start building a different castle? It's exactly the same building blocks. You just need to decide that I want 5 of this, I want 4 of that, I want yellow, pink, I don't know, green, and I want to build a different castle. You can. You can. It's just a decision to make and to have someone to show you that, yes, there are those building blocks, there are different ways, and you get to choose what you want to do with your life.
Hmm. As you were saying that, I was thinking back to where you're talking about how your subconscious was speaking to you, giving you that little like, hey, maybe you should rethink this. You know, your back is feeling a certain kind of way. Like, I don't know if you can physically do this anymore. I'm curious about like the subconscious in that scenario, but then also the subconscious and its role. I think you're bringing it out there a little bit, but like, what's some of the subconscious stuff that's going around? I'm like the first words that are coming to mind is like permission and fear of sticking out, like things like that. As somebody's taking on that new path, I'd love to just get a little bit of your take on both of those scenarios because I think that's I'll share afterwards, especially with the injury thing. I think that one I hear like stubbornness, like that one, where I'm sure a lot of people resonate.
Yeah. Yeah, you will know that from what you do day in, day out, and perhaps personal experience as well. Yes, so I believe that our subconscious knows what's best for us. Your subconscious mind, or you can call it unconscious, it completely is up to you. It's there to serve you, to protect you, to preserve your body, your mind, and your soul. And it will do it the best way it knows how. So the way how I believe it works is that every time if there is something that's either great for you or not so good for you, you will have some kind of a sense. And some of us will be tuned into it so much more than others. And this is something that you can absolutely learn. It does come from your upbringing as well. So if your parents were a bit more open to it, you are probably more perceptive to it. If they weren't, then you may not be, but you can learn it at any stage in your life. So what I believe in is that your subconscious will always tell you whether something is right or wrong. It's just a matter of choosing to listen to those signs and learning how to listen to those signs. Just like my subconscious was. I was very stubborn, as you say, about my back problems. I know it wasn't leading anywhere nice, to be fair, but I kept ignoring it. And the more I kept ignoring it, the louder it kept coming back because my subconscious knew that it wasn't the right thing for me. It absolutely knew that the whole topic of the brain and the mind and all that, that was absolutely the right thing for me. Helping people, very purposeful living, absolutely the right thing for me. Impact, having this impact on the world, absolutely the right thing for me. The physical stuff wasn't. It wasn't, it was until that point, but I couldn't carry on. Now I wasn't listening to that part, so it kept coming back louder and louder and louder because it will. If you're trying to protect a child, let's say you are about to become a father, aren't you? So if your child, once your child is playing, I don't know, on the streets or starts running, If you just tell the child, can you please stop? And he doesn't stop, then you're just going to keep shouting louder and louder and louder, won't you, until he stops and doesn't run in front of the cars. Yeah. Because you want to protect them. Now, if that child stopped on the first instance when you asked, can you please stop, looked at you and said, Daddy, I heard you loud and clear. I'm not running under the cars. I can see them coming. You would shut up, wouldn't you? You wouldn't have to carry on talking and alerting him and talking louder and louder and louder because he acknowledged that he saw the car. This is exactly how our subconscious works, in my opinion. It's always there to serve you, to protect you. And if you don't listen, if you keep brushing it under the carpet like I did, or pushing it away, trying to push all that anger, sadness, fear, guilt, whatever those feelings will be, try to push them away instead of listening to them and acknowledging them, the louder they will come back. And this is when physical stuff happens, physical injuries, for instance, like for me with the slip disc, or we start developing anxiety, excessive amount of anxiety, or panic attacks, or moving to depression, or even to burnout. We weren't listening that we needed a break or that we needed to do something different. So your subconscious made sure that you did turn it into something more serious. Yeah. So it's better to listen, isn't it? To stop it there and then as it's happening. In my opinion, and that's my journey, we are talking about 39 years, so I wasn't born with this, but it was about learning how to listen and learning how to talk to my subconscious as well. Because sometimes it tries to protect you in a way that's not actually good for you, because this is how you taught it to. Unconsciously, you didn't know that you did. So sometimes we need to talk back and we need to retrain our brain, our mind, our subconscious as well. So it's a bit of give and receive, isn't it? Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Right. What I loved there was I went to this there's a guy named Perry Nicholson, and I might be paraphrasing something he was referencing as well. He said that one of the classic things is pain is a signal for change. I think it's easy to assign good or bad, or it just is, and it's telling you something is awry. So I was hearing that, but I love how you were really illustrating another. It's not my quote, but the way it goes is if you don't listen when it whispers, you're gonna hear it when it screams. And as you were saying before, like it just shut you down. Your body got hurt. Um, I think, and what I think is hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around is like, oh, this thing that's kind of brewing in my mind is now manifesting itself physically on the body. I think people have a hard time grasping that mind-body connection. And I would even go so far as to say, like, it goes outside of that as well. There's probably signs and symptoms in your life, whether it's the relationships you're in or some of the other things that people might see. What are some of those things that people might see as well? Because you had mentioned anxiety, which I think that's, everybody's got anxiety nowadays, apparently. So, that's the chronic thing that's coming up. But what are some of the other things? And I think it's just so important for people to hear that because most people will only think, oh, like it's just in my head, or it's just like I get a little back pain or something like that. But it's so like narrow-minded. They're not seeing the bigger picture. What are some of the other things that where it might show up?
Everywhere and anywhere, literally. So it can be little things like, as you say, a bit of pain here and there. But let's just have a think about where that pain is. When we don't want to take the next step, then sometimes our movements get a bit distorted or we start developing knee pain. If you don't want to say something out loud, then your throat starts to hurt. If you don't want to hear the feedback that's coming in, then you develop an ear infection. If you don't want to see what's happening, yeah, do I need to carry on? So there are a lot of schools of thought on how your body speaks to you or your subconscious speaks to you through your body. Loads of research as well. So it's a matter of stopping and listening. When I get ill, or when anything happens, an injury happens, or I feel aches and pains here, the first thing I do is start listening in. Okay, so what is there that I'm not giving myself, or what I'm giving myself too much of? Am I pushing myself too hard? Have I worked too much and not given myself the breaks that my body, my mind, my soul, my creativity, my productivity needs? Is that why my back is aching? Because I've been at this desk for too long and I haven't taken those rests. Yeah. So it's always about going back and seeing, am I doing the right thing for me? What is my body or my subconscious trying to tell me through my body? And sometimes the answer will be that you need to put an ice pack on it. Done. Yeah. And that's okay too. Sometimes it is an actual injury that you had. And sometimes when it's just those aches and pains that appear, it's better to start looking inside and see what could be the cause of that, especially when it's chronic, persistent pain, for instance. So what is going on in there? What am I not listening to? Is my body telling me that the profession that I've chosen or the job, the workplace where I'm at is not right for me? So it's putting me into bed with an illness. It might be consistent flu or I don't know, cold. It doesn't have to be anything serious. Why is my immune system so low? Instead of going to the doctors and keep popping pills, how about changing our lifestyle? Changing what we do and how we do it. And it's not just your work, it's not just your profession, it's everything that you do as well, isn't it? It's how we take care of our body. And whether it's physical exercises or whether it's breathing, whether it's yoga or meditation, just being a little bit more mindful in general in life, or taking things a little bit more lightly, a bit more playful. It's those changes we get to decide whether we make them or we don't make them in our lives. And whichever one you choose, you're absolutely right, it's your life. Who are we to argue? Yeah. So absolutely, but you need to make sure that you know these channels of communication with yourself, so then you get to make a well-informed decision.
I really appreciated that take on it because you mentioned the treat. Most people will just go to the pill or whatever. I'm going to treat it with this thing, which is basically just symptom management. I'm going to numb out the pain. But as we talked about before, pain's not necessarily a bad thing. It might be telling you, hey, you should be paying attention. Something's
Exactly.
going on here. If I dim that sound, I can't hear it anymore. It's still coming though. The problem's still coming. So there could be a real issue there. But then what you were talking about there is more what I love is the zooming out to more of a lifestyle adjustment to take a
That's right.
bigger picture at the entire container of your life. What are the like I was visualizing like a big, like a lot of pressure coming down on like from all angles of your body. And it's a constant pressure, but where and how could you create space to alleviate some of that pressure so you can live your life in a more enjoyable or simple fashion. Um, I was really appreciating again, like thinking more like the body is like a tuning fork and it's kind of saying, hey, something's out of whack here. And I know for some people are like, that sounds so woo woo and that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that sounds just, you know, it's not grounded in something. And I think a lot of like chakras and those kinds of things. And what I was really appreciate what you're saying is like, how about, whether people want to take our words for it or not is one thing. That's up to them. That's their own stubbornness.
Exactly.
But I loved how you said, hey, just why don't you just pause and take a look? And you said the word chronic pain. If this is chronic, like there's a track record here. Maybe
Hmm.
just take a like what were the constant things that were always happening when the pain would flare up?
That's right.
If you got enough of a track record, there's gonna be plenty of opportunities to be like, oh, there's probably some trends in here. There's probably some consistent things. It's not just one thing all the time. Like it's not some random thing all the time. Um, but so
You
many
know,
people, go ahead, sorry.
yeah, no, sorry. It just that just reminded me that with a lot of my clients, well, actually, all of my clients, I could actually put it in a sealed envelope before we get started. Is that after we have a number of sessions and we move into like monthly mental fitness maintenance sessions, for instance, and after 2 or 3 months of them, being happy and getting on with their lives, they are going to have a dip every single time. And as I say, I could put it in a sealed envelope. And why is that happening? It's happening because we become a little bit too cocky with what we are doing and we forget to do the basics. Is that exactly what you are saying? Is we get to do the foundational bits that made us happy, that made us free to live. It's the same with the pain, isn't it? The pain just shows you that you are not doing something or you're doing too much of something. You're not giving yourself something or you're giving way too much of something to yourself. You're not back to basics. And this is when I say to people that, okay, so it's time for us to go back to basics. I would have guaranteed that it would happen, whether it's month 2 or 3, it doesn't matter. My years of experience show that it's somewhere around that time when we feel that, oh, everything is happy and candies and rainbows. So now I forget about what actually got me there. You can't. You can't. And you will see that with your clients, won't you, with PT? People think that, oh, now I've got the muscles and everything is good and I'm fit and healthy, and they don't come back to you anymore. And then 3 months later, they're going to appear saying, oh, those muscles are gone. What happened? Oh, really? Are they? Have you exercised them? Well, no, I haven't. Are we really surprised?
It made me think of for whoever's listening at this point, like pause and like rewind it, whatever that was, 20, 30 seconds, and re-listen to the exact thing that you just said, because I can't remember who I heard it from. So I apologize for not referencing the person appropriately, but they said, more often than not, we need to be reminded more than we need to be taught. And what you were saying there is that it's always it's always a good time to go back to the basics, because that's the foundation that is holding up the abundance. And I love you had said it's like uh it's right when they're feeling great. They're like, I don't need this anymore. I've solved all my problems. And what I heard, and I've also experienced, but I think it's worth bringing out right now, is that ironically, that's the most dangerous point. It's you got a couple compliments, you're looking a little good in the mirror, you're like, I can soften up this, I can do it. And sure you can. And the singular event, and we'll use like nutrition as an example, like having that ice cream is not going to like crush you. Like a little extra of that one day, it's not going, nobody's going to notice. But it's not so much about that. And it's not about being rigid and dogmatic. I'm not trying to say that either, but it's do you in that breath also let go of the foundational things that got you there in the first place? So I people, if nothing else, you don't take, we're kind of like ironically close to about halfway through this thing right now, but there's a book called I'm pretty sure it's called When. Have you ever read the book When? And
No, I haven't.
it was the first time I was ever confronted with this timeline thing that you were talking about there. Look at me, my Apple update stuff giving me the thumbs up. Um, I'll see if I can find the book and make sure I'm referencing the right one. But the way he said it was roughly around halfway between any journey. So say a client signs up for 3 months, whatever. It's at that 6 week mark, they're gonna hit like the dip.
Yeah.
There's gonna be something every single time. Every single time. So I loved that idea of you writing down, like, well, you said you have them write down the problem that they're struggling with. Was that what is it, or the thing that they were going for? Like what I missed
Oh,
that.
we always do that. Yes, no, no, no. We always write down what they would like to have happen and what we are traveling towards, really. But no, what I meant here is that with every single client, I could write down that I guarantee you're going to have a dip because I know it's going to happen. It's exactly that. I haven't read that book, but it seems like I'm not the only person talking about this. So it must be true or must be something about it. Is that my experience says, been practicing for a number of years, that after a period of time, which is about that 2, 3 months mark, people will have the dip because they become cocky, because they stop doing the basics, because they stop reminding themselves. It's those foundations, I call them principles, the principles of that good life that you want to live. Those are the bits that people forget. And once you forget that, if you don't do this, I'll be really surprised. And I deliberately don't tell people that to start with. First, I don't want to preempt it. I don't want it to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm most probably it will happen, so I'm fairly certain that it will, but I don't tell them because I want them to experience it. I want them to experience what happens, of course, while I'm still there holding their hand, sort of, or give them this safety net. I want them to experience what happens when they stop doing the things that make them happy, that give them the right mindset, that give them that peace of mind, that reduces their anxiety and all the rest. So once they experience it at this small, teeny tiny little dip, we will never go back to the big dips because they know that's when I can remind you. So, okay, the only thing I do there, I don't even tell them anything, is that reminder, not teaching bit. I just ask them, so what have you or what haven't you been doing? And they answer the question for themselves. And they're like, oh, yeah, I haven't been doing everything that I set out to do to make me happy or to be the person I want to be. You know, it's not coming from me. I believe that it's not the answer that enlightens, it is the question. And I'm not actually, it's not my own sentence. I'm quoting someone and I can't remember who, but I think it's a really good one. It's the question that enlightens, not the answer. Nobody wants to hear you talk. I believe that everybody has everything they need, all the resources they need to make the changes they need to make in their lives. It's already within you. All I need to do as a tour guide to your mind is ask the right questions and bring the right tools to help you bring that out. If I just keep talking, like I am doing now, if I don't just ask the questions, it's not helping you as much as if I just ask some very nicely placed questions. And you can come up with the solutions yourself.
Well, right now it is the appropriate time for you to be talking, talking, talking. So like that, go with it. I'm loving it.
Good. And can I just share one more thing with you on this note? And this is my favorite ever saying or quote, is that when an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. But when an egg is opened by an inside force, life begins.
I was wrong, everybody. Go back and rewind for this one too. There you go. We got two rewinds. So we got two rewinds for today. I have never heard that. I really like that quote. Hmm. And I think what you're saying there, I mean, I think especially what you were talking about, it goes beyond just like the coaching realm, like you're talking about working with a client. I think what you talked about there about uh, enticing or bringing out that inner genius from them as opposed to you telling them, I think that is transferable across so many things. Parenting, so many people are just telling their kids how to think as opposed to teaching them how to think, which is by invoking a response through asking a question and then holding space while they figure it out. As you said, I'm gonna mess up the quote, so I'm gonna have to rewind and go back and listen to it again. The crack when if the egg is broken from within, the life begins. Well, yeah, you're opening that new door in their mind, but it can go if you're a boss, if you're in a leadership position, if you're in a relationship with anybody, even just talking to yourself, asking yourself a question as opposed to
Mhm.
whatever, other voices are just pounding down on your skull that you're really listening to instead of like, well, as you talked about before, how do you tap in? What's my inner genius or what's my inner voice telling me right now on my body, in my mind, in my psyche, in my lifestyle? I thought that was, whew. I think there's so much. What I love about what you said there is I've come to a place in my life. I admire people far more for the questions they're asking for than what they're telling me because I see there's so much humility in the ability to pause and reframe the thoughts in their head, but to shape it in the form of a question so that somebody else can bring it. It's almost like saying, I want you to be the star right now.
That's right. And I also believe that nobody's broken and nobody needs fixing, but everybody has those resources. And our job as NLP practitioners, if you like, or coaches or PTs, whatever you want, as long as you work with people and you want to empower them, then our job is to help them find it within. So in my NLP practitioner courses that I teach, this is one of the biggest thing that I teach people, and this is one of the biggest thing people struggle with, is to pause, is to stop talking, because it's not your job to talk as a practitioner of any sort. It's your job to listen and hold that space, that safe space for them to think. This is what we don't get in our everyday life, because people think the quicker you respond, the quicker you react, the better it will be. No, that will be a knee-jerk reaction. If you think about all the wise people that you look up to, just think about how long do they wait before they respond. They don't react. They respond appropriately to whatever the situation is or whatever the question is. So what they do is basically they put a pause, put some time between the stimulus, the question, for instance, and the answer to that. Is it going to be a knee-jerk reaction? Or are they going to wait a little bit longer, and is it going to be an appropriate response? And that's what we don't allow ourselves to have. We feel that we need to be there, we need to be on the ball all the time, we need to do things quickly, and we need to be witty and all that. Yeah, that's nice as well, nice trait to have, but at the same time, we're not actually giving ourselves enough time. I mean, how many times have you thought to yourself after the conversation finished, oh, I could have said that differently? Or you woke up the next morning and you were like, oh, he meant something completely different. I just didn't listen. Or I didn't want to say that. I wanted to say something different. I just didn't give myself the time. Well, why not? Yeah. So it's twofold, isn't it? It's giving the person the time to think it through for themselves. And it's also holding ourselves back as practitioners of any sort to try and fill in that gap. Because we are not actually helping the person by talking. We are not actually helping the person by firing another question at them. We help the person by biting our own tongue and holding that space for them to think, to find that answer within. So then their egg will be broken by the inside and not me hammering from the outside.
My first thought as you're saying that is like, why do we, quote unquote, general speaking, why do we rush to get like react so quickly? Why do we, in a global sense, struggle to pause and respond with questions? What do you typically see with that?
Isn't it conditioning? Isn't it how society works? Isn't it if you get there quicker or faster or I don't know, better than anybody else, or you get more, or you learn more, or you, I don't know, then you are better than anybody? I think the measurements here are wrong. They are a little bit twisted when we measure a successful life, for instance. Your life is successful when you are 25 and you already have 3 kids and a beautiful big house and run your own business, not even 6-figure, an 8-10-figure business. And so then you need to be fast, you need to be there, you need to be on the ball all the time, and you must not stop. I don't agree. I don't agree at all. I think we all need to find our own definition of success or happy or fulfilled and live by that. Before that, if we just keep going and never pause to reflect, or we just keep judging ourselves as opposed to reflecting on what has happened, then we will never get there, because we're just going to work on somebody else's agenda as opposed to what is right for you as a person. And by stopping that whole judgment about yourself when you look back at what you've done or the thoughts that you have, you start reflecting and say, okay, so what just happened? What have I learned from it? How have I grown? What could I do differently going forward? is it actually aligned with who I am or who I want to be? Or am I putting on another layer or something so then later on I can come to Vanda and unwrap those layers and unbecome who I'm not? And try and find my true self when I'm in my 40s. Well, why not start at the beginning and not wrap ourselves up with those stories, with those layers of different things that make it so heavy?
As you're saying that, I'd love to get your take on this. It made me think that I feel like there's almost like a guilt that if I don't destroy myself and have enough accumulated scars, wounds, whatever, that I'm not allowed to have that success, or I'm not even allowed to ask myself those questions. So inevitably, what I'm visualizing is just watching somebody continually dig themselves a hole, as opposed to appreciating, wow, I have these gifts. In some ways, I might be ahead of other people. There's plenty of other people that might be ahead of you too, but like, but because of this weird guilt, shame thing, I feel like I have to go cause a problem again to just get. It just seems like so much wasted energy. So much wasted energy.
And it is that, isn't it? It's again, we're going by what we've been taught and how we were conditioned. The bigger the pain I have, the more I will deserve what I'm getting. I absolutely don't agree with that now, but I used to, because this is how I was brought up. But comes a time when you learn about yourself a little bit more and then you make decisions for yourself. Now, when it comes to all these things that you mentioned there, that shame and guilt, and I'm gonna go as far as all those negatively labeled feelings: anger, sadness, fear, guilt, jealousy, resentment, shame, and all those. Now, every single one of those have a really important function in our lives. And I have a theory. I call it marbles and elephants.
Oh, do tell.
My theory on that is that all these negative labels, feelings, or thoughts have the positive intentions behind them for you as a person when they are a little marble size, healthy level. Yeah. Now, the problem starts when we have that little healthy amount of fear or guilt. And then we start wrapping it around with all those different stories. And we tell ourselves that, oh, I did that one wrong as well. And that one looked at me funny. And that one is doing it so differently. And that just means that everybody hates me and I'm doing it. And we grow it into this huge elephant that then sits on you and stops you from breathing. So when it comes to the little marbles, a little marble size healthy level of fear, for instance. What do you think? What do we have fear for as human beings? Why do we need fear?
Stay alive.
Exactly. Otherwise, we would walk off at the edge of the cliff. So it's there to protect you, isn't it? Now, why do we have guilt?
Stay alive. Socially, socially stay alive.
Exactly. If we didn't have guilt at all, none, not a drop, we would go around and kill people, wouldn't we? We would steal, we would do all sort of things. We would not have a moral compass, would we? Yeah. How about anger?
Same destruction. We would just destroy things. Yeah.
Is that if we didn't have any anger, that's the opposite side, isn't it? If we didn't have any anger, what would happen to all those people trying to walk all over us?
We'd never stand up for ourselves. We would get destroyed. Yeah.
Exactly. So again, a protective function. We need our marbles. We cannot lose them. If we lose our marbles, we know what happens. Yeah. So the problem isn't with a little bit of guilt, because you were mentioning guilt before. The problem isn't with a little bit of shame. Those are really important. They are asking really important questions. Are you in the right? Are you doing the right thing? Are you hurting others perhaps? Or when it comes to jobs, am I good enough? Do I know what I'm doing? These are just questions. So why not answer them at a marble size and say that I was a little bit out of line here. I learned my lesson. Next time I'm not going to do that. So fulfill that function that guilt had to make sure that you don't keep repeating the same bad stuff and growing it into bigger and bigger and bigger. But say that, yes, I've learned from this lesson. I went a little bit closer to the side I don't want to be at. Take a couple of steps back. So another theory that I'd like to share with people is this whole binary thinking is that it's black or white, it's right or wrong, it's left or right. But are those really the two choices? I either feel guilt to this excessive amount of elephant that then sits on you and stops you from breathing, or I don't have guilt at all. Do we need to jump from one to the other? Or how many shades of grey are between black and white? And we haven't even mentioned all the colors. So it's all about finding those little bits, the little shades that we feel comfortable within. It's not going to be one. It's definitely not going to be that or that either. It's somewhere in here. So then we can take a couple of steps this way and say, I still feel comfortable. Take another step, a bit too far, but then we don't have to jump back to the other side. We can just take 1 or 2 steps back. This is where you will find a balance, your yin and yang, where you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. One or the other cannot exist without the other one. We need those marbles. We can't just have happiness and joy and all those things. We need a little bit of guilt. We need a little bit of anger, sadness, and all the rest, because they keep us decent human beings and they keep us protected.
It just sounds like it holds it all together. And I think what you talked about there, what that resonated with me is between order and chaos. There's that very rigid, like boom, and chaos is just it's crazy. But just even describing those two things, like I know one of them makes me feel really restricted. The other one makes me feel like I have no center. I have no bearing. So somewhere in the middle, what you're saying though made when people think like, oh, just take one little small step here, one little small step there. It made me think back when you were talking about before to try to keep up. I have to be successful by having, 12 figures or whatever by the time I'm 23 and a half years old and 8 mansions or whatever the things you were saying before. It it sounds so subtle. And I think that and I know I used to struggle with it, but I can see why so many people think that's that's but that's very powerful. They want it to
Mm.
be this big, massive, all of a sudden I saw this massive check in my bank account or, whatever. These masses of people wanted to see me at this thing. But that's what you're talking about, like redefining this success where it really is a lot more about eliciting this this very like fine-tuned voice and learning how to dial into that voice in everything. What you were really saying there, like in every scenario, do you know how to tap into that and walk that line? And I guess probably the more scary part for most people in that is like, how do you walk that line for yourself, not based off what somebody else is telling you, as you're saying, the coaching or the asking of a question versus the dictator, the control, the somebody telling you what to do, which yeah, that's easy, at least initially, but later on, like you don't have like I think what you're talking about here is what's so great is that you're teaching somebody how to bring that out of themselves, but also know how to um, integrate that skill set that goes everywhere in their life, which I think is so powerful. What you're saying, that's what was really shining through for me as you were describing the marbles and the elephant. I think that's
You see, I believe this is the way forward. See, I always say to my clients as well that my intention isn't to keep you on for a long time on a weekly basis, because the only thing it will do is build your reliance on me, and buy me a new house. That's about it. But what is the point of that? I'm personally not motivated by that. I'm motivated by purpose and impact. And my impact in this scenario would be to enable you to, or help you. It's not even me enabling you, it's showing you how to enable yourself, how to give yourself permission to use this, to use that little £7, £6 thing between your ears, is to understand how it works, understand what is limiting you, what is hindering you, and what is empowering you. Understand that inner chatter that's going on in your head. Is it your empowering voice or is it your limiting voice? If it's your limiting voice or your negative self-talk, if you like, what is, again, going back to that marble, what is it trying to say? Are you going to let it grow into this elephant and shout at you? Or are we going to quiet it down and keep it as a marble, which we already established we want to keep? How can the two of them work together? Because once you have these foundations and you're confident enough in your ability to manage this, that includes your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your communication, then you will be successful going forward in whatever you choose to be successful at. And then you won't need to keep coming back to me, because that's not the aim, or to go to any other professionals. The aim is for you to learn how to think, how to think differently, what language to use with yourself, how to empower yourself. Yeah, and if you need a reminder, you can come back in 3 months' time. We give that reminder to you, and then you move on again. Be happy. I always say, if I never see you again, that's the happiest day of my life. Not you. I want to see you. But in general, when it comes to my clients, it's it's about knowing what is going on so you can manage your own mental fitness long term.
So I want to give you a little shout out, just as you're saying that. I believe one of the great responsibilities of people just giving people voices is to also help people improve their BS detector, which is essentially what I think you were doing there.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody who's listening right now, one of the telltale signs I look for in somebody who's really good at what they do is essentially they tell their clients, hey, the point is for me to put myself out of a job, more or less. I'm using kind of abbreviating the words here.
Yep, pretty much.
As a telltale sign of somebody who's good at what they do. So everybody who's listening right now, you just heard that there in spades. I wanted to make sure I paused and stopped and did that because I think, especially in this world right now, where you can see every facade on the internet, everybody's pitching something and they use scarcity-based tactics and they use their words and beautiful marketing language to pitch themselves as the only solution and the greatest thing that's ever happened. And you will always forever need me because you have this problem and you're broken, more or less, that harkens back to maybe like 10 minutes ago when you said, like, I don't believe people are inherently broken.
Nobody is. Nobody needs fixing.
Well, that's the difference in saying, like, you're not broken. We're just helping you understand yourself more so you can better navigate the world, as opposed to, I'm broken. If you're broken, you're always needing somebody to fix you. That's just not a healthy relationship, not least of which a healthy professional relationship. So I think that kind of language needs to come out more. And you have to operate, somebody who delivers from that position, like you are, has to operate from a tremendous amount of inner stability of like, no, I really want this for you. I really care about this for you. I want you to be better. So, if I didn't love you already, like, which I already did,
Thank you.
like add another 12 reasons why right there, just from that. That was, I think that's so powerful because especially we're getting into this, you get into the mindset space, we'll call it mental performance space. It gets real cult-like real fast. So I want to make sure that somebody like yourself, just like that language there, I think is so important. And I really appreciate that because I don't think enough people will take the time to say, like, that's the point. Like, that's what the relationship can evolve into that. Like any good relationship can. Friendships can evolve, or like they can all evolve. And I think that was really beautiful.
That includes your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
That's the most important relationship you will ever have. That's that's the person who is with you 24/7 and will be with you from before the day you were born, if you believe in that. It depends on your map of the world, until you die or even beyond, if you believe in that. So you want to nurture the relationship. You want that person to be your best friend as opposed to your worst enemy. You want to make sure that that person uses the right words with you, because the words you use at thought level will basically define your destiny. Yeah. It's nurture that relationship. This is really my main message here, is that it all starts and finishes with you. It's your life. Nobody else's. Nobody else can tell you what is right for you. You are the only one who knows. And if you are not right, you are not going to be right. And nobody else around you who are dependent on you will be right. It starts and finishes with you.
You got me ready to run through a brick wall right now. Like, let's go. You got me fired. Fired up. Before we pivot to our fun questions, yeah,
Ooh, fun question. Yeah.
fun question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. I know there's plenty of people who just like that's still jargon in their brain. Like fundamental, like what would be some like fundamental principles, understanding of that? We talked a little bit about some of those things today, but like if somebody wants to open the door to NLP, to what that is, you brought up language, you brought up some of those things. What are some like the fundamental principles that they would be exploring and thinking about for themselves, or even like maybe a couple takeaways for that so they can start, helping themselves with that?
Yeah. So when you think about how we perceive life in general, how we perceive the world, we can see the world in many, many different ways, can't we? As individuals, we will see the world in very different ways. We will see them through different lenses or filters, if you like. There are different neurological levels that will define who we are as people, our environment, our behavior, skills and capabilities, our values and belief system, which will be our drivers, limiting or empowering, and the identity that we have of who we are as a person. Now, for every single one of us, it will be different. So our experience of the world will be differently structured. And NLP, apart from it being the user guide to the brain, it's also the study of that structure of how we see the world, and also the study of excellence. So how do people do something amazing, and how can I take that and try it on for myself? How can I model that? So it teaches you, for you being able to experience the world, you need three main components. You need a mind, as the neural side of NLP, the N. You need a language, so the way how you communicate, not just with others, but with yourself as well, and the way how your brain communicates to your body. And you need some programming, so that interaction that your brain and your body has through that language. So that was what NLP explores: the way you think, the way you behave, the way how you experience life in general. And then it looks at what is there that works for you, what is amazing and empowering and you want to do more of, and what is there that perhaps hindering you, limiting you, some programs that are not quite working the way how you want. You can call them patterns, you can call them habits, whatever you want. How can we tweak them? If that is working, that isn't, how can I bring more onto this side? How can I turn things into something that's empowering you? And there is a lot within NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, to do with your language. And that language isn't just a language, again, that you use with others, but what you use with yourself. And if you are happy for me to, I would love to share my favorite ever quote with you.
Please do.
And I have it right there. I have it there. Actually, I'm just going to read it from here. It's on a card. I do give this card out to my clients as well because it's so amazing. So it's from Frank Outlaw, and it says, "Watch your thoughts; they become words. Watch your words; they become actions. Watch your actions; they become habits. Watch your habits; they become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny." So that's what NLP does. Me as a master practitioner and trainer of NLP, I'm listening out for the language you use to describe your experience of life. And we start from there and we move into the middle of that onion that I was talking to you about, those layers of your environment, your behaviors, your skills, your values and your beliefs, your drivers, and who you are as a person. We tweak things there. So then we can make sure that we order the right environment and the right behaviors, the right communication to who you want to be.
That's probably the best description of all of that I've ever heard. So I'm really glad I asked. question that way. That was really good.
Well, I am a trainer. What can I say?
I
I'm a
mean,
trainer
hey,
of neurolinguistic
listen,
programming.
I've watched a lot of experts say a lot of things, not as eloquently as that. I really like the way you packaged that, and like, especially if I can ever like start to visualize things, it really helps. But I think what also was really powerful there was about, people, I think sometimes people throw away the words. They don't think about how they're speaking. And it made me think back to just like the subtlety we talked about before. Like, how are you arriving this moment? Like in this one moment, you could say something this way, or you could ask something this way. Like there's a lot of different ways you could do it. And that subtle tweak might be the difference between the success you're looking for, the true success you're looking for, or repeating the old pattern that you're really looking to avoid. So I think that that's where it's hard for people to realize that if people are just listening to you, and if you're not getting the results you're wanting, it's probably because the things coming out of your mouth are they're telling the story. They're telling the story of how you actually think about things. And I think there's so much value once people slow down and realize it's literally slowing down to understand how am I communicating, as you said before, not just with others, but with ourselves. That being said, I feel like often the way we are communicating with ourselves is exactly how we're communicating with others, whether we realize it or not, because it's just, as within, so without, that kind of concept. That was really
That finishes with you, so
right. Exactly. It's a full circle, isn't it? Let's pivot because I want to make sure I respect your time as well today. Let's start off with question number one. So, question number one is, what sports or creative activities did you play when you were younger, and how did you play them?
mm, I did all sort of sports, believe it or not, and I did all sort of creative activities. Literally everything and anything that you can think of. In that sense, that I get bored easily, if you know what I mean. If I don't keep learning new stuff, if I don't keep improving, then I'm probably gonna leave that thing and learn something new. Or if I feel that I got to a good level and that was enough for me, then I'm gonna move on to something new. So I do use art, for instance, as my own therapy. So I do paint, draw. My new favorite, I know it's not quite childhood, but my new favorite is fused glass. I absolutely love it. It's a combination of mosaic and glass making, and oh, absolutely lovely. So I've done all sorts of different things, lino prints, sculptures or sculpting. I don't know, created CD covers, all sort of different things, literally, when it comes to the creative side. When it comes to sports, I even played basketball with my teeny tiny 5'2" height or something like that. I was the fastest. I wasn't tall, but I was very fast. So I always could go to the. I don't even know the technical terms in English, I have to say. But yeah, so I was really, really fast. So that was good. My favorite one was always horse riding. And I did that when I was a child. But in Hungary, where I'm from, it's a very, very expensive hobby to have. So I had to stop at some point as I was growing up when I was a teenager. But I recently restarted in June, and now I horse ride again, or horseback ride, as you say. You say yes, you say horseback riding, don't you? Yes, it is horseback riding. Yes, and I absolutely love it. And I keep telling everybody that I don't want to become a professional rider. That's not my aim. I love every moment of it. I even loved it when I got thrown off the horse. It's just amazing, that connection that you get to have with the animals. I
Very.
didn't answer the question, and I did at the same time.
Well, you answer the question, and I'll share with you why. So, of course, I'm not going to just throw out some playful questions without having deeper reasoning behind it.
Of course.
So, I studied kinesiology in college. Excuse me. And one of the courses we learned about play. I kind of threw that away at the beginning because I actually really struggled with the concept of, especially free form play. I really struggled with the concept of like free form art for myself. Definitely was some envy around that in my life. But one of the key takeaways I did take from it, and especially as I look back now, has been very powerful, is that play is incredibly important because the way you play demonstrates how, like, what your tendencies are. It's how you often arrive at situations. So what I was hearing in that, especially as you brought up NLP with about studying of excellence, and especially when you're younger, you said like, if as soon as I got really good, I had to go to the next thing. I needed to like be good and then move on and move. But the other side to that, what I found interesting is that you were learning a lot of like global concepts because you did so many different things, which I think is unique and interesting, especially how it ties to what you do now, because of what you talked about, looking at it not from just, let's call it symptom management, you have to look at more of a lifestyle, a global perspective in the pursuit of excellence. And again, of course, now it also sounds like your perspective on what success looks like, as you talked about the horseback riding. Even if I fall off the horse, I still love it because you reframed your success. So it's interesting just seeing the ways that you always did it still show up now, but how it's interesting how it's evolved along with the wisdom you've been taking on. So I think that was really, really cool. So
May I just add to that? Because I think this is a really important point because you said neuro-linguistic programming, yeah, NLP. When somebody asked Richard Bandler if there was anything that he would change about NLP in general, he said that, well, I wouldn't bloody call it neuro-linguistic programming, would I? He swears a lot, I really dialed it down. And then he was there like, okay, so what would you call it? And he said, now let's play. And this is what I'm trying to impart on my NLP practitioners as well, is that it's nothing serious. It doesn't have to be heavy. It's something fun, playful. It comes with curiosities, that attitude of curiosity towards learning. And that's what I have, and that's what I love. And I develop it more and more and more, is that lifelong learning. And how else could you do it than being playful and enjoying it?
and doubling down, I love that. I really love that. And I think that that is something that most people, when they hit that massive roadblock in their life, call it midlife crisis, call it big extreme pivot in their life, they've lost the joy. They've lost the play element of their life, which ironically, it was the play. They might not have seen it that way, but it was the play when they were experimenting, growing, learning, challenging themselves that got them to that level of success in the first place. To unlock the next level of success, though, it's going to probably look different, or the way you're going to look at it differently. It comes back. How do you get back to play? That was really cool. Did not even anticipate that. That made it even better. I really love that.
Oh,
So
you came up with a great question. There you go.
it only gets better when I have the right people. So thank you. Question number two. You're stranded on a desert island and you have one movie and one TV show that you can bring with you to watch for the rest of your life. So your desert island movie and television show. You get to bring one of each. What are those for you and why?
Now I have to think, is there are a few, quite a few on this list.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yes, there are a lot. I'm hesitating between Pay It Forward as the movie
Oh,
and The Bucket List. And there is another one that I don't remember the title of, but the movie is vividly in front of my eyes. So I'm going to leave that for a moment. But yes, I think Pay It Forward and Bucket List are the two that are just such amazing. They have such amazing messages and metaphors that I don't know. The Pay It Forward keeps my hope in humanity, and the Bucket List makes me think about my life differently, and that's where all that playfulness and actually enjoying life and doing new things come in. It doesn't matter if you are on a deserted island or not. Well, it matters even less there because you don't know when your life is gonna end anyway. So you might as well enjoy it and climb up on the top of that, I don't know, that banana tree or whatever that will be, get that coconut. Even if you fall off, then what? It's yes. And then when it comes to the TV program, it's probably because I'm watching it at the moment. It might sound a bit strange, but it probably would be something like, if not Dexter.
oh, I did not anticipate Dexter.
Exactly. I didn't think you would. Dexter for me is an amazing case study I love movies and I love programs and books in general that make me not just make me think, but also give me this insight into how people think in different ways. I learn so much from that, and I see some subtleties in Dexter. You know, when you think about each individual, how they think in general, and how they are all blindsided to what he actually is or does, and how he thinks and how he covers it up. And there are so many people like that out there. I learn so much from these sort of things. You know, if I thought a little bit longer, this may not be the program, but at the same time, this is what I'm watching at the moment, and it gives me that sort of sense. It would be something like that, something that makes me analyze or helps me analyze how people think. It might be the Big Bang Theory, you know. It could be many different things.
See, my wife and I watch Big Bang Theory every night before we go to bed. I've probably watched it in the background, probably, I don't know, 20 times through at this point.
I have
So
to,
that's just you brought that one up.
yeah.
The reason why I asked this question, I think that what the entertainment we choose to engage in tells us a lot about how we view life and also what do we want to be reminded of. So I thought, especially how what I might like what I brought up about how you look to like it's not about me. Like you're moving on and you can move on with yourself and you be happy. The pay it forward concept really shown through obviously the bucket list of like looking how to be grateful and appreciate, but also reframing what does success look like. I think that's shown through. And then obviously you did a brilliant example of like, well, I care about analyzing how people think. Here is a great case to, I mean, you could not have painted a more accurate, like, oh, that's the one I was like, Dexter, where are we going with this one? It had to be like some neurological, psychological thing. I was like, I got to hear her breakdown. That being said, people who like are do that kind of like, well, there's patterns clearly, and like, how do they justify right, wrong, and have their own? That was that was great.
What are yours? I'm sorry, I'm very, very excited. Is it okay if I ask back? What
Sure.
would you choose?
What would I choose? So my movie is Wedding Crashers because I just like to laugh. I think Will Ferrell is hilarious, and I laugh at like the physical comedy of that. Also, Vince Vaughn and I think Owen Wilson. I think they're hilarious. Like I sometimes need to be reminded to keep things light, and that does it for me. There's actually some other deep like things about relationships in there that if you actually like underneath the humor and some of the wildness and all of it, that's there. And then the show is Ted Lasso. When I watched that the first time, worth it. You want to watch stuff, especially if you want to think of more like the psychological stuff about leadership and how do you influence a group and you move people through things and the pay it forward concepts and just I felt like I was having like watching a spiritual journey of like my life in a certain ways at the same time when I was watching it. Whenever I need a good cry, I'll definitely put that on. Like that's a good one. For the record, pay it forward. Love that too. I don't know why. Like I'm already watching Big Bang Theory every night. So ironically, I probably should choose that one because that also has taught me it's very cheesy. You could put it on and like not pay attention and like it's fine. It's great background noise. But there have also been some very profound lessons that I've watched and it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And it's like it's taught me a lot about like watching the same thing over and over again and realize like they thought about some things here, like it maybe, or maybe I'm just like looking farther into it. I'm assigning my own meaning to it. Um,
That's
but
like a good book, isn't it? Is every time you reread it, it's going to speak to you in a different way because you are in a different stage of your life. These are all metaphors that speak to your subconscious. This is why you come up with your own solutions. If the same person watches the same movie, I mean, 10 people watch the same movie, every single one of them will have a different meaning or a different takeaway from it.
yeah. God, I love you. You're awesome.
I love you too. That's very good.
All heart right here. Third and final question, my dear. What is your deathbed meal and who are you sharing with it? Who are you sharing that meal with and why?
It will have to be rakot krumpli, which is a Hungarian dish. I
Oh,
don't normally like Hungarian dishes, but this is my ultimate favorite. It's basically layered potato with a lot of cheese and sour cream and some kolbas, which is the Hungarian chorizo. And it is just delicious and the heaviest and unhealthiest food that you can ever choose. So since I'm dying anyways, it doesn't matter. And I would probably share it with my other half, Johannes, because he's just the best anyways. And I wouldn't share it with many people. So if I do share it with somebody, it would have to be him. Yes.
I
Perhaps
love.
the only person I would share it with.
So I'll answer, of course, why I ask this question. Number one, I believe world peace is going to be solved one family dinner at a time. You and I both know a lot of those voices and things come
Mm.
from our early upbringing, and it's the family, or at least the surroundings we're put in. And in my own journey, the more I've gone to heal the wounds of my own family and deepen the relationships there, I see those things trickle out into the rest of my life, whether it's in my other relationships, my business, my own personal health. I see that transformative energy right there because it's the first school that we ever are in. With that as well, I think the other part of it, and you brought this up, like it's a Hungarian dish, you said. So I believe culture, a lot of culture shows up on the plate. You talked about a lot of different elements in there, a lot of different elements of you that you talked about today, which is really like really cool. And I love that. And the final piece to that is who are you sharing it with? So this element here, I wrote a speech for my youngest brother's wedding. I officiated his wedding a few years ago. And the speech is titled The Window and the Mirror. And I start off the speech with the eyes are the windows to the soul, but what if it's something more? And ultimately, I believe when we look into others' eyes, it's we're actually also looking at a reflection of ourselves. And on our deathbed, that person, if we have the opportunity to share that with them, they represent the highest form of growth of ourself, of our spiritual self in our lifetime. So I found that to be really beautiful, especially when we're talking about sharing it with our partners. They challenge us to become the better version of ourselves. If anything, they're usually the best, greatest coaches and teachers that we can ever have, so long as we let them be. Or sometimes even if we don't let them be, they're teaching
Yep.
us something one way or another. Um, so those are the reasons for that. The overarching things to those three questions, so you know, and this is my little way of like welcoming you into my life and like the way I felt love and connection through my life is that my father, when I was younger, he traveled a lot, worked a lot. But every 4 to 6 weeks, he would always take me out for a boys' night. And this was how I always knew, like, we didn't say I love you or anything like that when I was younger, but like I knew I was loved. And we would go to this place called Sports Authority over here in the States. I don't even think they're open anymore. We'd wander around, maybe get some sports things. We talk about that, whatever I was doing with my athletics. We grab a bite to eat and we see a movie together. And that was my way of feeling connected. And he was fully present and something that I carry with myself to this day. And I still like Wednesday nights, I have a religious boys' night with my buddies. It's our way of connecting, our way of like showing, like, it's just a different way of connecting. But I like to do this because it's my way of sharing, like, hey, we're having a moment together. We can feel a little love between the two of us. So there's a little story behind all of that for you as well.
Oh, thank you. That's really, really nice to get to know you even more. And it sounds like one of your love languages is quality time, isn't it?
It is. I'm an interesting blend. I'll share
Yeah.
that.
I
So
bet you. I think it's another conversation, isn't it?
that's a whole nother conversation, but I will share this with for a lot of people. This is a quick thing. I have a friend, she was on the podcast a while back, and she told me from another coach she had learned, she's like, the love language you struggle with the most to receive is often the one you need the most.
That's right.
And at that time, I was struggling with receiving words of affirmation. So I spent a
Mm.
whole year learning how to like receive compliments nicely. And I still was struggling with that. And then I was like, with like something with, and I was like, gifts. And gifts for me to receive something, a kindness from somebody is very difficult. And I'll take it one step further so people can realize I really need to like rag on myself here. I'm like that chick who like classic like my wife, like you should read my mind, you should know what's going on, you should tell me, and then you should solve it. Like I don't want to have to tell you what the problem is. I'm actually that problem. Where like I want you to think about all the things and then read my mind and then solve that thing for me because that's the stress that I'm dealing with in my life. So there's a little ragged on me there as well. But I share this only because I realized when I did the love language test the first time, I answered it in a way that I thought I would get approval from other people.
Exactly.
And so this brings up what you were talking about earlier with the guilt, like the marble. That made me think like it's a useful thing if we allow it to be. We just had to see it as the right tool. So I used that. I'm like, oh, this is a better way. The thing I'm feeling guilt. Like, that's what I need to lean into. That helped me uh, unravel some of that. So, anyway,
Beautiful.
before we go, if somebody's listening right now and they're like, yo, I need more of her in my life. I want her to help me go on this journey to excellence and all those things. What would be the best way for somebody to connect with you?
Probably through my website.
Simple enough. We'll make sure it's we'll have the website there. Don't worry, everybody. That will be in the show notes. So go click in the show
Yeah,
notes. There'll be a nice little link. Boop. It'll take you
that's
right
good.
to that.
Yeah, I do actually have a something that's called Wonderful Wednesdays, time for your mental fitness, and it is a mental fitness newsletter. And this is where I give all those mental fitness tools out for free. I do believe in paying forward, as we mentioned it before. It's a reason why that's one of my favorite movies, really. This is how I do it. So all those Wonderful Wednesdays come with a mental fitness tool or tip every fortnight. So if anybody wanted to get that, no other agenda behind it, just to give you some tips.
Love that. Well, again, that will be in the show notes. To close it out, what final words of wisdom would you like to leave our listeners with today?
I would like to read this out again.
Please do.
So people do actually pay attention. Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny.
I get a little chilled right now, just hearing it again. I love that. I love that. Well, Vanda, my dear, this has been a lovely, lovely little hang. I just love you. So this has been great. We had the puppy in the background too, so we had doubled up on all the love in this right now. Super grateful for you. Everybody, go check out her website, get on that newsletter so that you can get some great tips about your mental fitness, connect, up level your life, and all those great things. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your time and energy with us today. And until next time, I remind you to love everybody.